Alright, hey guys. Different style of video today, so bear with me while I try to make sure everything goes smoothly. So I thought I'd go over kind of my computer setup, new setup, and kind of my mentality of how things have changed over the past year, pretty much. So if you look on screen here, you'll see that this is my old laptop, an MSI GL62 7QF. Of course, currently unavailable because of the Rona thing, but it was actually gifted to me by Alex, and it was at the time that I got it, it was about $800 with about $65 tax and shipping and all that, so about $865. And that was, I want to say, a good 4 or 5 years ago at this point. And the specs at the time, were fine. A 1080p panel, 15.6 inches, full HD, with that i7 7700 HQ processor, 2.8 boost, or 2.8 base, 3.8 boost, 960M graphics card from NVIDIA with 2 gigs of VRAM, and then system RAM was about 8 gigs single channel, and then a 1 terabyte hard drive, which was partitioned into 2 separate drives for whatever reason. I was like, I need an upgrade, and I wasn't really using it as a laptop. I was using more as a desktop, so I was like, I'll just get a desktop. Why not? At the time, I was like, I've used MSI. I like their products. They're pretty cool. So I was like, I did my little research. I was like, okay, I want the best CPU. I want the best GPU. I need a lot more space. Of course, that's all I knew at the time was, CPU, GPU, storage, RAM. I was also running low on RAM a lot of times. So I was like, I want more RAM. That's basically all I knew at the point, because I wasn't into computers that much at the time. I just kind of knew the basics. Like I said, CPU, GPU, all that. So going to research for MSI, I found the MSI Trident X or the Infinite X and the Trident X I'm showing here. Infinite X with an i9 9900K and a 2080 Ti from MSI. 32 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of SSD storage, 2 terabyte hard drive storage, and a mouse and keyboard combination. And this was liquid cooled, all-in-one liquid cooled for like $3K. Trident X is basically the same configuration, i9 9900K, RTX 2080 Ti, 32 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of NVMe SSD storage, and then 2 terabytes hard drive with the mouse and keyboard combination. But it was a smaller form factor, and it was technically cheaper, like $100 or whatever. So I was like, yeah, these are pretty good setups. I heard about the i9 9900K and the 2080 Ti, top of the line. That was definitely more storage than I had at the time, and like quadruple the amount of RAM. So like, all right, I'll get one of these. Did more research, and I was like, okay, this is air cooled, by the way. I heard about how liquid cooling, like all-in-one liquid cooling, can fail, and that's a lot more catastrophic. And this one was also a small form factor, about the size of an Xbox, so I was like, yeah, I got this. It's technically cheaper, less fail points, smaller footprint on the desk. Yeah, I'll get that. But it's $3K, and your boy barely had $3K at the time. And this was, by the time I'd done all this research, it was probably end of summer, July or August. I was like, Black Friday. You get deals on stuff. And I looked around. Most things were going on sale, I think, like 15 or 20% off on most electronics. Doing the math, I was like, well, that puts it about maybe $2K to $2,200 for this. And I was like, well, if you combine that with the fact that I usually get like a decent amount of money at Christmas time, because that's pretty much all I get these days, it kind of would offset the huge investment. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll get this at Black Friday when it goes on sale, and then when Christmas comes around, I'll get more money to kind of, like I said, offset that drop, and then I'll probably end up paying a net of like $1,700, $1,800, about half the price. And that was my plan. That was literally my plan. So I waited. Black Friday rolls around. They didn't go on sale. I was like, per K. Anyway, but while I was waiting, for some reason, in my suggested videos on YouTube, I found Paul's Hardware, and specifically this video on how to build how to build a gaming PC in 2019, and the hardware basics video part 1. I was like, okay, it's 30 minutes long. I kind of like ran out of things to watch on YouTube. It was in my recommended. I was like, you know what? Heck it. I'll watch it. Watched it a couple of times over the first day and also a couple of days afterward, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is pretty interesting. It's pretty cool how different parts fit together and how you can, you know, upgrade or downgrade certain parts. They kind of work in your favor or your budget. There's certain things you have to think about, like compatibility, size, future upgrades you might want to do. So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I was like, okay, maybe I'll watch some other videos. So I watched, you know, I think I watched a couple of Linus Tech Tip videos and maybe Jay's 2 cents and eventually Bitwit about building computers and how to build it and different things you have to think about. And I kept talking about how it was cheaper to build it yourself than to buy one. I was like, okay. And of course I'd heard about PC Part Picker. So I went there and I picked out a part list that was equivalent to the Trident X that I was going to get. i9-9900K. Of course it doesn't come with a cooler, so I had to tack on this low profile cooler because it's in a low profile case. It had to be mini ITX, so I got that. Compatible board, 32 gigs, running 2/16 to 2666, which is right here in the description, right there. 512 M.2 NVMe, 2 terabyte, 5400 RPM. Again, going back to spec sheet, 2 terabyte, 5400 RPM. I was using not the cheapest, but also not the most expensive parts for the rest of this. The MSI GeForce RTX 2080 Ti Ventus OC is clearly right there. Silverstone I know makes kind of compact cases, so I went with that. The Thermaltake 600 watt power supply, SFX, because I assumed SFX because of the form here. And then I picked out just an MSI mouse and keyboard combo, bringing the total to, at the time, about I think it was 2600. These prices over here are inflated because, you know, the thing. 2600. I was like, okay, yeah, it's cheaper than buying it here at 29 or 2800, but you save 200 out of 3000. I was like, it's really worth it because then you're worried about, you know, other things like, okay, if something goes wrong, you have to contact that exact company, maybe getting a refund. What if the parts aren't compatible with each other, or, you know, something messes up? You have all these different people to go to instead of one company, MSI. So at the time I was like, yeah, it's not worth it. I'll just stick with this. But I kept coming back to this video and doing more research on my own. I was like, okay, what if instead of going for a top tier, highest spec ball-on PC, I went just under that, mid-range. So I was like, all right, start out CPU. I heard about, you know, the Ryzen 5 2600. I was like, all right, add that. But wait, I also saw, okay, this is obviously not the order that I saw it when I first did this list. Because while I saw that, 6 cores, 12 threads, 3.4 boost, 3.4 base, 3.9 boost, at around $200. I also saw the Ryzen 5 2700 here, 8 cores, 16 threads, and so that's more cores. I was like, yeah, because I knew I was going to do, you know, of course, more video editing, and I knew that required more cores. And also that kind of be on par with the 9900K. I wanted about 8 cores anyway. 8 cores, 16 threads. So I was like, okay, there you go. 8 cores, 16 threads. But then I saw the base right here is less. Even though the boost was more, the base clock was lower than the Ryzen 5 2600. So that's when I saw the 2700X. Still 8 cores, still 16 threads, but 3.7 base, 4.3 boost. So I was like, okay, there we go. I got more cores in the Ryzen 5 2600. It's a faster base and a faster boost. I'll go with that one. And it includes a CPU cooler right there. So another good thing about AMD, don't talk about buying an extra cooler for an unlocked processor. Motherboard. Everybody kept hammering the B450 Tomahawk. So I added that one. And, you know, they talked about 16 gigs. And also, everybody kept recommending Corsair and G.Skill memory. So I was like, okay, I'll go with those companies. They kept recommending 3000, 3200 speed, thereabout. 2 8 gig sticks. So I did that. Filtered by price. And at the time, the Ripjaws 5 series, I think these two exactly, were the cheapest. Then I was like, you know what? How much would more memory be? Because I know it's 8 gigs. I was running out pretty fast. And if 16 is the sweet spot now, just like how the Ryzen 5 2600 was a sweet spot at 6 cores, 12 threads, and I went for 8 cores, 16 threads, why not go for one step more memory so I don't have to worry about memory for a while? Especially also in my research, figuring out that video editing, again, something I was planning on doing, required more RAM. And also I wanted to multitask a lot more which of course, more RAM. So instead of two 8s, I went for two 16s, which I believe also led to the Ripjaws 5 3200 speed kit. Add that. For storage, I knew that SSDs were the way to go, but hard drives are better for mass storage, especially videos, where you're going to be constantly writing to and erasing, and I knew I had to be doing that with my video editing. Actually, let's just go ahead and go to my current build. So this is the build I had picked out. So Ryzen 5 2600, 2700X right here, B450 Tomahawk board, 32 gig speed, 32 gig capacity, 3200 speed. Originally, I got a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, which was going to be my boot drive and a couple of games that I played a lot, like Skyrim. Definitely going to cut back on that. Then I wanted a dedicated gaming drive, SSD gaming drive. So I went with, at the time, a 1 terabyte model. And then for videos and stuff like that, I went with a 2 terabyte Seagate Barracuda, 7200 RPM. A little before Black Friday, I picked all these parts out. And then on Black Friday, the 2 terabyte SSD went on sale for like $200. So I picked that up because I had all these parts shipped to my mom's house where I am now while I was back in my apartment. So I didn't actually build all this at once. I had to kind of pick up the parts and I had sent over here. So I picked everything else out during Black Friday. I also had this drive sent over to throw in instead of the 1 terabyte. So I have the 1 terabyte, so I was sitting over there. For a graphics card, I was debating between the 1660 Super or TI and a 2060. Ended up going with the 2060 because of more features like RTX, slightly better performance, and yeah, so I went with that. I fell in love with this NZXT H510 case. Not this color specifically. I got the black and red version, but just something about the box shape to it just really appealed to me, so I got that. And then a 750 watt 80 plus gold power supply. I got that wattage because I knew about the 50% efficiency curve. You want to try to get 50% more than your system's supposedly going to draw, and I believe at the time it was drawing like 300 watts, so I went with 750 to provide me more room for upgrades, like better components, drawing more energy and all that. I noticed that the case only had 1 or 2 exhaust fans, so I learned about case airflow, so I picked up an extra fan here, and I ended up putting 2 in the front and 1 in the rear for positive pressure. And for keyboard, I ended up getting this Red Dragon K551 wired keyboard. I ended up loving the thing. It's wired mechanical keyboard with Otamo blue switches, and it has a little keypad on the side, or numpad on the side. And I don't have much experience with switches anyway, so wasn't gonna get MX Cherry Reds, but ended up getting this one because I wanted something that was backlit red or multicolor. This ended up being the cheapest one that was backlit red at the time. So you see up here in total I spent about $1,550 on this setup right here. And I was pretty happy with it. I was like, it's not ballin', but it was definitely a lot better than my laptop because this processor only had 4 cores, 8 threads. So I was doubling my core count and thread count, quadrupling my RAM, quadrupling my storage, going from my 960M to a 2060. It was just going to be awesome. So I got all the parts, I built it, and like a week later, I had issues. Basically, turning on the motherboard would throw out GPU and or CPU issues, like the light on the motherboard would light up and it wouldn't boot. I didn't change anything into BIOS except the RAM speed to get the RAM up to the 3200 rated speed. So I was like, okay, maybe it's something I could, fix. So, I posted a couple of forums, tried to get some help. Nobody answered. Doing more troubleshooting, I found maybe it's just a faulty motherboard. So I ended up getting this ROG Crosshair 7 Hero Wi-Fi. The Tomahawk doesn't have Wi-Fi, which I didn't realize because then also when I play the controller, it doesn't have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, so I have to be wired up, which I kind of defeats the purpose of having a wireless controller. And also the Tomahawk only has, 4 USB ports? 4 or 5 USB ports, and I am a whore for USB ports. So like, okay, I need to get Wi-Fi and Bluetooth for my controller. I want more USB ports, and I knew chipsets has something to do with, how much you could overclock and all that stuff, and going from a B450 chipset to an X470 chipset on this one. I was like, okay, I could get the same motherboard for free, basically, or use that money toward an upgrade. And I got the Tomahawk for like 120, so I was like, 240 is double, but technically half off because I'm using money toward that. I was like, whatever, I want the more USB ports, I want the Wi-Fi, and also doing my research, some boards have a error code readout, which would be a lot more helpful than just a stupid light going off. So I knew I wanted that. Found this board, love it by the way. So I got it worked fine, but the RAM I had, the G-Skill Ripjaws 5, was not compatible with said motherboard. So it was running at base 2133 speed. Could not clock it any higher because it would just crash. So I was like, okay, either have the capacity without the speed, or buy a new RAM kit to get the speed I want and the capacity. So I found this kit, 32 gig RGB, 3600 speed. I checked the QVL list for the motherboard. It was compatible. You can see I paid $190 for it, so I got that. Worked fine. Yeah, it was good. And eventually I ended up getting these two case fans because apparently this case is not great for airflow, so I wanted more volume coming in, so I got two 140 mil fans because the fans I have are all 120s. I was going for a black and red theme, as you couldn't tell, so I went with the red LED ones. And then I have actually getting an extra monitor too, 1440p, 144 hertz, similar to the other monitor I had from you saw in the last computer setup video, which is 1080p, 144 hertz, 24 inch. I thought this was the same size, but it's 27 inch, so it looks kind of stupid. So altogether, based on combining what worked and didn't work in my current setup, here's what we got. Ryzen 7 2700X, ASUS ROG Crosshair 7 Hero Wi-Fi motherboard, G.Skill Trident Z RGB, 32 gig memory speed, 32 gig capacity, RAM at 3600 speed. I got the slightly faster speed to account for 3rd gen Ryzen that I'm eventually going to get. Unfortunately though, this motherboard only supports 3466 maximum RAM speed. Anyway, 2 terabyte, geez, SSD for games, 1 terabyte NVMe SSD just for Windows and programs. Definitely overkill. 2 terabyte hard drive for videos and editing and all that. 2060 video card, NZXT H510 case, 750 watt EVGA Gold Plus, fully modular power supply at that, and it has the black cables. Very nice. The two 140mm Corsair fans, the 120 120mm Be Quiet fan. There's my two monitor setups that I told you. There's the keyboard, and I got the Logitech G552 Hero wired. It's also running in red LED pattern. So altogether, of course, this is not complete because some of these are missing prices from the Rona, but it's, you know, about 2K, a little over 2K. Still less expensive than Trident X, and a lot more upgradability. And personally, I like it because I have my own theme going, black and red. It all kind of matches. It's still kind of MSI based with the two monitors and the color scheme here, so it works. But personally, if I were to go back and redo this list again, knowing what I know about parts being incompatible, I could have redone my storage setup and all that, I would go with this. I would get 3rd gen Ryzen, the Ryzen 7 3800X, which is a 3.9 base, 4.5 boost, ASUS ROG Crosshair 8 Hero, which supports 3rd gen Ryzen, and 3600 speed, all the way up to I think 4400 speed, 4600 speed, yeah. I even doing my own research and all the compatible motherboards, it's still the best because it has, you know, like I said, the RAM speed I need, the Wi-Fi, it's X570 chipset, so it supports PCI Express 4.0 if I want to get something like that. It is 3600 speed RAM, 32 gigs. I still would have gone with the 2 terabyte game drive, but I would have cut back to like a 500 or 250 gig NVMe SSD for boot and programs. Still would have stayed with a 2 terabyte hard drive for videos and all that. Still would have stuck with the H510 case from NZXT. Probably would have gone for an 850 watt 80 plus power supply just to give me a little more headroom in the future. And with all the money I saved from the storage redo and cutting back on other things like the extra fan, which apparently was not really needed in this case to starting out. Like I said, I could have afforded the better CPU, motherboard, and a 2080 from MSI. Not a Super, not a TI, but a 2080. It's still a lot better than a 2060 for a little over 2K. Of course, this is not counting the power supply and the RAM. But also, this motherboard is usually not $500. It's like $300. I don't think this price is right either. This 2 terabyte, I don't think it's usually that much. So that's what I would do if I were to redo this. But what's my dream build is this. A Ryzen 9 3950X, 16 core, 32 threads. I have the speed of 3rd gen Ryzen for gaming. I have the core count processing power for video editing, and a Noctua NHD 15 Chromax Black for that superior air cooling, Arctic MX for thermal paste, just cause. Same motherboard, same RAM, 4 terabyte SSD for games, or possibly 2 terabytes in RAID 0. Again, 250 or 500 gig as NVMe drive for boot and programs. 4 terabyte hard drives in RAID 10 for increased performance and backup for videos for YouTube. You gotta throw in a 2080 Ti in there. A Phanteks P600S, one of the only other cases I found that I absolutely love. Just the way it's built, and definitely a lot better airflow than my current case. It even has room for a second case up here, or a second system up here, which would just be, just a super flex. Then a 1000 watt 80 plus platinum certified power supply, and a UPS because cleaner supply of power. And in the past, like I think month, we've already lost power like 3 times while my computer was on, and I lost when I was working on videos. Kind of a bummer. you know, so UPS, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And if you're curious about the capabilities of this current configuration, I have Shadow of the Tomb Raider here, running at 1440p, 144 Hz, anti-aliasing, FXAA. Pretty much everything is on high, and everything is on except motion blur because it's stupid. And you'll see my results here. About 90 FPS on the Mountain Peak, 67 in Syria, 65-ish the Geothermal Valley, and overall about 74 frames. I use this game as a benchmark because it has a built-in benchmark and it's the one I'm currently playing. So I also ran 3D Mark, all the graphics test, and a CPU test, 1440p. You see I have hardware monitor over here, monitoring my core clocks, temperatures, and all that. And here's my final results. Total graphics score of 6,908. Test 1 was about 44 FPS. Test 2 is about 40 FPS. CPU score of 8,611 with about 29 frames for the CPU test. Look over here, my max force speed was about 4.1, 4.2. Got up to about 67 degrees Celsius on the CPU, and about 75 on the GPU. And I'll tell you, also playing Overwatch a lot, the frames are well in excess of 100 as you see in the top left, but the GPU heats up to about 80 degrees constantly. So, but I think the thermal limit is like 85, so not quite there. And you see my memory and timings here of 16, 19, 19, 39, if you're curious. So if you stuck to the end of this video, I appreciate it. Definitely different for both me and you, but something a video I've been wanting to make for a while now. Hopefully I won't cringe too much editing this, and I'm hoping to get this up in the next couple of days. So yeah, thanks for watching.